Can you guess where our journeys are going to take us today? That's right, the Lost Sea.
Long time no see.
First of all, this is going to be a 3/4 mile round trip walk. It's half a mile down to our lake and then a 1/4 mile back up. The walk back up has been compared to climbing up about a 14-story building, but don't worry, there are 3 rest stops along the way. Also, this yellow tunnel we are sitting in is not the natural entrance. We actually blasted through about 135 feet of rock just to make it easier for y'all to enter and exit the cave. But I'll point out where the natural entrance is located later on. And then just a few quick rules I have to go over. Please stay along the trails and behind me at all times. Be sure not to smoke or vape. If you have any trash, there are trash cans along the path, so you can place your trash in there. And then lastly, be sure not to touch or to face anything. If you do, it could be a $50 to $500 Tennessee state fine. But of course, if y'all are ready, you can follow me on down. Tim. I go down. So the formation you can see right back here in this corner is called the Cascades, and it's probably going to be the prettiest formation you'll be seeing this entire tour. So if you want to take any pictures, you're more than welcome to do so. And of course, flash photography is welcome in the cave as well. The amber-colored part up top you can see is called drapery. It's made of an iron oxide. And then the white waxy part on bottom is flowstone. It's made of a calcium carbonate, which can be found in items such as humps and Rolaids.
Can you see the formation exactly?
Top part you see coming out of the cave ceiling is stalactites, and then the bottom part coming out of the cave floor are stalagmites. The easiest way to remember that is a stalactite will hang tightly to the ceiling, and a stalagmite might reach the ceiling one day. These two come together, they'll form what's known as a stalactite, or a column, which you can see there to the left. Of course, whenever y'all are ready, you can follow me on down. Just be sure to watch your step as we transition from concrete to clay. Cherokee Council Chambers, and it gets its name because back in the 1820s, a Cherokee Indian chief named Chief Craighead acquired the cave through the Hiwassee or Ocoee land grant, and this is the room where him and his tribe would have their meetings. They would also come down here just to escape the hot summer days and the cold winter days, so they built fires fires down here which caused some smoke damage to the ceiling and the formations along the ceiling, which is why there are those dark patches and why the formations are the dark dull color that they are. And of course, we also know the Cherokee were down here because back in the 1920s, we had a group of teenagers come down here exploring, and they found items such as pottery, jewelry, and arrowheads, which you can still see in the glass showcase in the main lobby. Also, if you look right up here, you'll see what's known as an anthodite. Anthodite is a Greek word meaning cave flower, but they're not actual flowers. They only get their name because of how they form. But of course, anthodites are some of the rarest formations in the world, and here at the Lost Sea, we do hold the world's majority, which is why we are a U.S. registered natural landmark. Just of course, these anthodites are inactive, and we know this because of their dark dull color. But of course, a quick little fun fact about anthodites is they only grow about a cubic centimeter every 1,000 years. So if you were to come back in about 1,000 years, the active ones might be just a little bit bigger. Right here's a replica of the boat we'll be taking later on in the tour. Yeah, don't worry, I'm just kidding. This is actually what's called a leaching vat. Back during the Civil War, Confederate soldiers would come down here mining the cave for saltpeter, which is basically just solidified bat guano. And does anybody know what bat guano is? Yep, it is bat poop. Now, of course, they put that in the leaching vat, pour boiling hot water on top of it just to seep out the potassium nitrate, and then they drain on down to the bucket at the end where they added what's called potash lye, just to help form saltpeter crystals. They then scraped off the saltpeter crystals and sent them off to refineries to be made into gunpowder. So, of course, I guess you could say the Civil War was fought with bat poop. Also, as we continue, if you look along this wall over in here, you're going to see writing in black. And that's from the tips of Confederate soldiers' torches. If you look into the date 1863, you'll notice some scratch marks have been taken out of every single number. And that's where we had it carbon dated to test its authenticity. 1863 is our oldest known date in the cave. And then you'll see other little white scratch marks like Dennis Ray Belcher, Melissa and Jeremiah, and then on down Bart Simpson. That's just some modern day vandalism. Of course, as we do continue, be sure to watch your head on this low-hanging rock. All the black right away. Yes. Pendants you can see hanging down from the ceiling. These are formed when water would rush down from the natural entrance and just wear away the rock. Also, for those who are wondering where the natural entrance is located, it's actually located right up this path. But in order to get up to it, you'd have to walk up 132 steep stone steps, and I'm not mentally prepared to do that today. Also, that path is another room. It's our second largest room in the cave. It's called the Big Room. A bar opened up in that room in 1947 called the Cavern Tavern. It had 3 moonshine stills and 3 dance floors. People could come down here and drink 3 times as much as they could on the surface and still not feel its effects. So they were thinking they were getting solid bad liquor and would store taking out everyone behind them. Also in that room, there's about a 90-foot pit. Now, an explorer came down here in 1940 exploring that pit, and he found the remains of a Pleistocene jaguar. Those remains have been sent up to the Natural History Museum in New York, but we still have a replica of its head and paw print in the glass showcase in the main lobby. And if this cow were still alive today, it'd be about 8 feet long and weigh about 500 pounds. Also, back in the 1950s, we did serve as a fallout shelter in case of any natural disasters. We had enough supplies to feed about 20,000 people for 2 weeks. But of course, we had no use for the supplies, so we did have a majority of them removed, but there are still some remaining down here today, and as we can see right back here in this corner. All that's in those tin boxes and jugs is a couple gallons of water and some old saltine crackers that probably wouldn't taste very good today. Alrighty guys, so we are currently at the deepest point underground will be the entire tour. We're currently about 550 feet underground. And I know that may seem a little strange seeing as we're going downhill the rest of the way from here, but this is only because we're under the peak of the hill you probably saw behind the main lobby. So of course the farther we go down in the cave, the more the land up top is going to slope off and even out. And then of course you may have noticed a little red glowing hole over here, and that is called the Devil's Hole. It is 13 feet deep and tapers off to the size of a softball. It said if you've been bound the past week and you look down in there, you'll see the face of the devil. But if you've been good, you won't see anything. But of course, as the story goes, when we first opened up, we had a group coming through and a couple women looked in and they started screaming and running back up to the yellow tunnel saying they'd seen the ugliest thing they'd ever saw. When their tour guide took a look in for himself, he saw something quite surprising. So he asked the women to come back down here and take another look, and what they actually saw was the face of our maintenance worker changing out the light bulb. But of course, y'all feel free to take a good peek in, and whenever you're ready, you can follow me to the other side of this opening. Now, so if you look right over here, you'll see what's known as the Baby Grand Canyon. It gets its name because it's formed the same way the Grand Canyon was, which is through water erosion. The water that came down through here came from a small opening up next to our third rest stop. But of course, it'll be a lot easier for me to point that out to y'all later on. Now at this point, you will be walking through the Baby Grand Canyon. So once you get down here and take a look around you, you'll notice it looks more like the Grand Canyon than it did before. Thus, of course, please be sure not to touch it. It is made out of clay instead of rock, so it is very fragile. Alright guys, so you probably hear the water rushing down, and that is Crystal Falls. Crystal Falls is one of our 3 main water sources to the lake, but it is the only visible one because the other 2 are actually underwater. Also, Crystal Falls is about 98% pure, and then the other 2% is just minerals. Also, as we make our way on down, on the right-hand side of the path, you'll be able to see an authentic Tennessee moonshine still. It is one of the 3 left over from the Cavern Tavern, but it is the only one still remaining in the cave today. Another one's out in front of the general store being used as a flower pot, and then of course the third one was stolen, so I have no idea where it is today. But of course, just a quick little disclaimer I have to give to all my groups. This hill right here is the majority of that 14-story building that I had mentioned earlier. This hill alone has been compared to climbing up about a 7-story building. So if there's anyone that feels like they cannot make it back up, you can feel free to wait over at this first rest stop, but it would be about a 20 to 30 minute wait, and you would miss the boat ride and Crystal Falls.
Crazy.
What? So I'm fixing this all?
And as we do continue, just be sure to watch your head on this low hanging rock. It's called the wishing rock because you'll wish you didn't hit it. Hold on, you can't touch the sides and the ceiling of this tunnel. It's the only part of the cave that is granite instead of limestone. Alrighty guys, so the tunnel we are currently standing in is called the Ben Sands Tunnel. It gets its name after the little boy who discovered the lake. Ben Sands came down here in 1905 at the age of 13 during an extreme drought and crawled through an opening about the size of a bicycle tire. When he got through to the other side of the opening, he realized he was standing knee-deep in water, so he scooped up little balls of clay and started throwing them in every direction. But all he could hear was the sounds of splashing water. So he crawled back out that same opening and tried to convince his father to come back down here. But by the time his dad did come down here, the drought that was occurring was already over. So all he could see was a small mud puddle that had filled up the opening. Then back in the 1960s, we were blasting through here during another extreme drought, and we rediscovered the lake and found Ben Sands living nearby in Sweetwater at the age of 73 and gave him full credit for discovering the lake. So I guess you'd say it's because I told you so and they'll see history. Also, as our workers were blasting through here, they didn't want to haul all the debris back up to the yellow tunnel, so of course they stacked it over here and built this wall. It is not natural.
So we have finally made our way down to the bottom of the cave to go check out these beautiful large rainbow trout that have been stocked here in the Lost Sea. And there are quite a few of them. So join me on my next video as we get on this boat right here. Go out into the Lost Sea and check out those large rainbow trout. You definitely don't want to miss this feeding frenzy. I will see you next time.